OBS Studio is one of the most powerful streaming programs available, and there are a lot of features that content creators might not know about. Today, I want to teach you 20 tips and tricks that I've learned over the years to help you step up your streaming game. Hello, my name is Pixel. Today I'm going to teach you about all the little features that make OBS Studio stand out from all the other streaming softwares. If you want, I stream over at twitch.tv/pixelperfect with a 1 instead of an I. Now for today's demonstration, I am going to be using 26.0.2, so make sure you're updated to that version so you get all the features that I'm going to be explaining today. And with that, let's hop into it.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to show you in OBS, and this is a fresh install on my computer. Just wanted to show you that. So everything you'll see here is set to default. I've only added a couple sources over here to make the explanation process a little easier. So with a fresh install on OBS, the first thing that it does is go to dark mode. But originally, OBS never supported dark mode. That was brought out in an earlier time, but you can actually select different theme colors. So if you don't like that, you can go to black and blue. You can do the regular grayscale dark mode. You can do Rachni, which is like a cool aqua blue. And then you can do system, which is blinding territory. Now, most people probably aren't going to use light mode, even though this actually isn't even the original light mode. This is not what OBS used to look like, but this is the 4. I just use default. Second, we're going to connect your account. So I stream on Twitch. So the first thing that you can do is connect your account. You can use a stream key if you don't prefer to connect your account, but there is a reason for direct Twitch integration. So click connect account and then just log in like normal. So now that I've logged in, you can see that it is already connected. Now the cool thing about this is that when you click apply, you actually get direct dashboard integrations. That's what the important thing about linking your account is now, because you no longer need to use Streamlabs OBS. I'm looking at you. Don't use Streamlabs OBS because everything you need is right here. And the cool thing here is that you can actually go up to view, go up to docs, and then open your Twitch stats. So if you want to see, I've got 125 subs right now on Twitch, got 6,200 followers, and we got 43,000 views. And all of these things are dockable. All you do is just grab the little box and drag and drop it over here. This is exactly how I run my OBS setup. Now, if you want, you can actually even add one more doc that is your activity feed. So if you want to see your follows, your gifted subs, your subs, bits, cheers, everything, it's all right here. So you can have all of these docked here if you want. You can have it so that everything you're monitoring, you don't need to have your actual Twitch dashboard open. It's all readily accessible for you right here in OBS now. And speaking of dockable things, number 3 is actually going to be your stats box. Now, I have talked about this in other videos, but the reason it's good to have a stats box is because this tells you exactly what's going on in your system. It's like that paperclip dude from Microsoft Word, if anybody remembers him. It's more like just your buddy that sits down there. I always have this docked right down here. So basically what this tells you is that your rendering frames, your lag, your encoding lag, and then it also monitors your network so that if your internet's dropping, it tells you that right here. You don't need to look at this very often, but everything is right here if you need to know what is going on. Number 4 is a fun one because it's about custom streaming resolutions. So you can go into your settings, and in your video output tab, you actually are not limited by just streaming at 1920 by 1080 or 1280 by 720. You can actually type in custom resolutions, and if you've ever stopped in my stream, I actually stream at 936p, which is 1664 by 936. This is a perfect 16:9 ratio that is the perfect sweet spot for a 6,000 bitrate between 720p and 1080p. The thing that's really convenient about this is that if your computer can't even do 720p, you can actually go even lower than 720p while keeping it at a 16:9 ratio. You can type in custom resolutions, and you've probably even seen 900p on a couple streamers, but we've actually found out that 936p is the perfect sweet spot for an X264 slow encoder preset at 6,000 or even 8,000 bitrate. Now, if you're on a single PC streaming setup and you haven't watched my encoding video yet, go check that out. But I talked about this briefly, how you can save power. You can actually disable your preview right here just by right-clicking on it and then the enable preview and turn that off. That will save a lot of encoding and rendering if you have a weaker streaming PC. Very helpful. You just won't be able to see everything that's going on. What's also convenient is that you can also change the preview scaling. Like right now, it's set to scale to window. So basically, if I drag this around, it will constantly change. However, if you change it over to canvas, it'll actually zoom into what your base resolution is, or you can also set it to your output, whatever you're actually streaming at. Now, I leave it scale to window because sometimes I need to adjust things on the fly, and this is more convenient rather than trying to slide things around. Now, the 6th one is called scene projection. So I'm going to turn on one of the sources that I added in here. It's a selfie from a couple years ago when I still had short hair. And what you can actually do if you have a multi-monitor setup or even a single monitor setup, this is a really nice way to look at your scene. So what you do is you click on the scene you're currently on, you right click it, and then you go to full screen projector and you click it. And now you're actually seeing this scene in full screen. So now if I need to like look at something, I'm really nitpicky with the way that I set my scenes up. So I like to make sure that everything is lined up just so. Everything is nice and tight within its borders. Like right now, this face cam is all perfectly within inside its own edges. And I like to make sure that I do that by using the full screen projector. Now, one of the ways that I actually make everything look so clean and get it all lined up perfectly is called source snapping. So source alignment snapping, it's right in the general settings here. Make sure that's enabled and make sure that, because it's default, that's not going to be turned on. Make sure you turn that on. All 3 of these boxes are checked. I like my snap sensitivity set to 10. So when you click on this, sorry, it's locked. Let's say it's smaller, right? This is my face cam. Now, when I move it, you can see it's actually snapping to the edge. See, it's kind of like pulling it in right there. And right there's the center. Right there's the center. And that's dead center of there. And what this also allows you to do is if you have a face cam overlay, it'll actually allow you to snap it right to the face cam as well. Other sources that are enabled, so long as you have all 3 boxes turned on. The 8th thing is actually being able to custom crop and reshape things and distort them. So if you hold the Alt key and then grab one of these little squares right here, what you're actually going to do is start cropping. So you see how it's not moving, but it's actually just taking it away. And the little green highlight right here, that lets you know that this side is cropped. And you can do that with any of these. And you can just do it right on the fly. And this will make it so if you don't have like a perfect 16:9 face cam, you can actually crop it. That's how I have this camera set up. So this box is actually a 16:9 turned on its side. And I just cropped out holding the Alt key and shrunk it down to about that. That's a rough estimate, but that's about what it looks like if I were to show you in my actual OBS. Another nice feature is you can actually distort image size. So let's say you have an overlay that's not a perfect 16:9 and you want to make it fit. If you hold the Shift key and grab one of the squares, you can actually make it fit to any size you want. Now, if I let go of the Shift key, it's going to snap right back to its original source. So make sure you're holding the Shift key until you make it fit to whatever you need it to. So just remember, Alt crops and then Shift distorts. The 9th thing is actually being able to use the arrow keys to fine tune this. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom in on the preview scaling so you can really see how this works. And so make sure you're clicked on the source that you want to move. And if you use the arrow keys, you can actually fine tune exactly to the direct pixel that you want. Now, the reason that this is really useful is that if you have a 2-monitor setup, what you can actually do is use what we talked about earlier on the full screen projector, make it show up, and then on the other monitor, you can actually move it with the arrow keys and see just down to that last pixel what you're trying to get. And that's how I get my face cams to line up exactly inside of my overlays every time. Okay, so the 10th thing we're going to talk about is groups. Now, when you start adding everything to your stream, like your overlay right here, and then your face cam, and then your mic, and then your notifications, and anything else, banners, all that, you're gonna get a lot of sources in OBS. And one of the ways that I like to clean all of this up is make it a group. So what you do is you hold Shift, and then you click everything that you want to highlight. See how they're both like a nice blue now? Right-click them, and then go to Group Selected Items. So what this is going to do is it actually puts them within a folder, and we'll just call this Facecam Group, right? And now what you can do is if you toggle the eye, it'll actually turn the whole thing on and off, which is really convenient. And then you can hit the toggle arrow, and now it's just put away into one thing. And the 11th thing to add on top of that is I like to color code my groups. So if you right click on that and then go to set color, you can set your face cam to purple. Boom. And if you highlight all of them, then set the color, it will actually set each one, but you don't really have to do that. I like to just set the folder to the color, because then it'll be easier to see if you have the colors or the folders open. So now if I have a folder here and then I have a red folder down below, you'll be able to see the colors separating each one. Either way, it's your preference, but you can color code and also group them up. Now, we're going to talk about one that's really fun and can give you a lot of advanced ideas. This is called scene nesting. In the face cam scene, this is the source we're going to be looking at. This is like your face cam, right? So this is what you're seeing me in right now. So on here, if we were to add a filter and a color correction, let's say we turn the contrast up, right? Now, if we were to go into the gameplay where I'm in the Facecam overlay, it's also affected that one. We don't want that. We only want the one in Facecam to specifically be more contrasted. Now, we're going to turn this filter off. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to create another scene with the Facecam in it, but we're going to put the filter on that scene. So we're going to go what's called into the nested selfie. So we're going to go into here, and then we're going to actually add the filter specifically to the scene, not the source. So you go into filters, and I have one already pre-made, and this is just going to turn the gamma up. So now we've got this in here. So now this is how it works. Now you would think it's going to affect it in the other scene, but it doesn't. And the reason is because we've put the filter over the scene, not over the source, right? So now what you can do is actually go back in and add a scene as a source, if it's not confusing enough as it is, as a scene, as a source, and then add the nested selfie. So now you can actually toggle between having alternate things without directly affecting it. Just understand that you have to put the filters on the scenes rather than on the sources. Otherwise, if you affect the base source, it will affect every other one. So one of the most important things about having a good stream is making sure you understand audio and making sure that your levels are set. Now, obviously, you can just drag the sliders around. I've talked about what you should set your levels at to make sure you sound good. I've also made a video on making your mic sound professional. If you haven't checked that out, feel free to go check that out. Now, one of the things that I like to do is I like to set my desktop audio at about a -8. That usually is pretty comfortable for notifications and anything else that's happening on the system. But you can actually go into the advanced audio properties, specifically type in the exact number you're looking for, and then you can also lock the audio. Now, you do that by clicking on the gear and just clicking lock volume. Now, the reason this is important is because I like to use my scroll wheel a lot, and sometimes if your scroll wheel is touching this, it will actually start moving it unintentionally. So by locking your audio, it will never move. Even if you click on it, you actually have to go back in and unlock the volume. Now, it's not going to be very common that you're moving your audio, so that's why I like to lock it, because once it's set and everything sounds balanced, make sure that you're the main focus. Then there's the gameplay and the notifications. Just lock it, and then you never have to worry about it again. So the 14th thing that I want to tell you about, and it actually goes along with locking and cleaning up your interface, is you can actually hide media sliders. So one of the things that I do is I have an animated overlay here that's considered a media source, but it's not actually making any sound, so I don't need this slider. So all I do is I mute it just to make sure that if anything ever bugs out, there's no audio coming through. And then I actually just go in and hide it. So now it's back to being clean. Now I can see my desktop audio and I can see my mic source as well. And if you ever need to access that, all you do is click unhide all, and it shows right back up, and they are in alphabetical order, so you'll be able to find it right away. So number 15 is custom Facecam shapes. So when I used to stream Super Mario Maker, I liked to have a custom Facecam overlay that didn't look like other Facecams. You can actually add a mask to make your Facecam look any way you want. And you do this by going into filters, and then you're going to add an image mask blend filter here, and you're going to make sure that you change the alpha mask to the alpha channel. It's going to default to color channel. You want the alpha channel. What that is going to do is it's actually going to remove the negative space, the thing that isn't there. So this image here actually is a direct shape of this rectangle here. So now if you look, my Facecam specifically looks like this. So how this filter works is it operates by using a ping file, PNG, and then whatever has an alpha layer transparency, it will remove from the source that it's been applied to. So I'm using what's called a bubble mask, and it literally just uses the same image, and then I apply it directly to it. And then if I wanted to, I could put the bubble outline in there, and it would sit directly on top of that. So why don't we do that? We'll add the image, and we'll just call it image, and then we'll browse, and we'll do the bubble outline. And then all I would have to do is resize it to where I want it. Got to play around with it a little bit, make sure the edges touch. Use the arrow keys to fine tune it, and there you go. You now have an overlay. Speaking of streaming, if you haven't, feel free to go follow me over at twitch.tv/pixelperfect. I'll leave a link in the description down below. Don't forget to also hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to help me grow. I greatly appreciate it. We already have almost 400 members in the Discord, and I've made a couple free goodies and overlays as well as outlines for you in there. They're free for you to come in and get. Just hop into the Discord. Link in the description down below as well. Number 16 is custom stinger transitions. That's this little box down here in the corner. Now, what this does is it actually makes it so when you jump from scene to scene, it looks fancy. So basically right now it's just cutting, right? That's just a hard jump. It's jarring. It's not enjoyable to look at. So what you could actually do is change it to, let's say, a fade, and you can set the millisecond, the duration, how long it takes to fade between each one. Now that's really basic, and a lot of people either use just cut or fade. You can also use slide or swipe. But let's say you want to add a custom stinger transition. You can actually go down here and click add stinger and then name it to whatever you want. We'll just call this one Nova, for example, and we'll hit OK. And then we're going to go find the file that it is. Now, this is one that I have used specifically from Nerd or Die, and this one's just called Stinger Transition. And then they gave you 5 colors. This is from their Nova package, and I absolutely love this one. So we're just going to add the blue one because they don't have purple. Hit open, and then you would think you're done, but first we're going to show you how it works. So we have the Nova one selected, so when you hit it, you see how it changed before the Stinger Transition even initiated? We actually have to go back into the properties of that and change it. So we're gonna change the time to frames. Now I stream at 60 frames per second, and each stinger transition is going to be different. You just gotta kind of fiddle around with it until you find the sweet spot. I'm gonna guess 60 seconds is here. Now, if you wanna hear the stinger transition every time you change a scene, you can actually change the audio monitoring to be monitor only mute output or monitor and output. So it'll actually make it so only you hear it, but stream doesn't. Or you could do it so you and stream both hear it, but I leave it off because I don't need to hear the transitions. I just let that happen on stream. And then I always make sure that I have this set to crossfade. If you set it to fade out and then fade in, what's going to happen is every time you change a scene, your voice is going to go really quiet, and then it's going to come back in. And that's really frustrating. If you let it crossfade, it's actually going to make it so that your voice stays consistent all the way through each scene. So always make sure that it's set to crossfade, monitor off, and then you can even click preview transition. So now, you see how it's gone? It's changed. That was too early. You saw how it changed the scene still before it actually blinked? So what we have to do is try and guess, we'll say 80 frames, and then preview transition. Still too early. So then you just set, we'll say 90 frames, preview transition. And that was actually just a little too early. We'll set it to 100 frames. Preview transition. It's going to go, boom. Now you don't see the scene change. Go over, and when you change this, it's going to go, flip, and now we're on the other scene. And that's a custom stinger transition. Now, what's really cool is you can even take this one step farther, and you can actually set dedicated transitions to specific scenes. So if you were to right click on the nested selfie, and let's say we go to transition override, we want this one to only do Nova. So every time I go to this scene, it's going to do Nova, right? But there's a catch. If you have this set to Nova, every single time you change, it's still going to do it. OBS doesn't know what transition to use. It only ever defaults to what's over here. So if you want fade to be here and you don't have an override, now it's only ever going to fade each time you use it. However, now that I've set a dedicated override to nested selfie, even though it still says fade over here, it's going to use the Nova transition. And this is really cool when you want to specifically delegate different scenes. If you're talking to your chat at one point versus if you're playing games, I like to use the actual dedicated transition for when I'm going into games. If I'm just showing, for example, my right monitor on my streaming PC, I'll use the wipe, so it makes it look like I'm sliding over to the other monitor. If I'm going into a game, I'll use the full scene transition like you saw with Nova. Otherwise, if I'm just talking, I'll use fade. And that's it. Now, by default, OBS does not start at an MP4 format for recording videos. It actually defaults to MKV. Now, in the settings, you can automatically change that by just going to recording format in the output tab here and changing it to MP4, but there is an issue with going to MP4. If my computer were to crash right now, I would lose this entire video. Now, the reason MKV is a desirable file format is because you can actually still save the file even if my computer were to crash. The only thing is you need to convert it. Now, what you can do is go into Advanced and then select under Recording, go to Automatically Remux to MP4. Now, what that's going to do is once you're done recording, it will automatically convert it, but it'll save the file first. Just in case your system crashes, you'll have a backup, and then you can actually reconvert it into an MP4. This is a great way to save any footage. I've seen a lot of Let's Players that I used to watch lose their footage because their computer crashed or they had a blue screen of death, something that made it so that they couldn't preserve their file format. So I would suggest starting with MKV and then remuxing down to MP4. Number 19 is going to be how to save native clips from OBS directly. So what you can do is go into Settings and then go into Output. Now we're going to enable what's called Replay Buffer. So what this does basically is it's going to start recording the last 20 active seconds constantly. So it's only ever going to save those 20 seconds or whatever you set it to I'd set it to 30. That's what most Twitch clips are. But what the nice thing is this is going to save it directly to your computer. So set your replay time to 30 seconds. It's only going to use about 9 megabytes of RAM. So you don't have to worry about that at all. Click apply. And you're actually going to see over here, start replay buffer. So now we're going to go down over to hotkeys. And we're going to find the spot where it says replay buffer. Save replay. And we're going to make sure that we set a hotkey for this. So for me, I'll just say, let's set it to F9. So let's say I hit a crazy shot in Warzone or some other game that I'm playing. I can just hit F9 right away and boom, it'll save the last 30 seconds of whatever just happened. Now there's only one catch to this, and you need to make sure that when you're streaming, you also make sure that you have your replay buffer running. If you just click start streaming, but don't click start replay buffer, it actually won't save your clip. This has to be running along with streaming in order to make sure that it will capture that moment. So make sure that when you start streaming, you have replay buffer set and you also have your hotkey set. It would be nice if OBS had a feature where when you started streaming, you can also start your replay buffer. I don't know if there is an advanced setting that I may have missed somewhere in here. I know you can start recording when you start streaming, but I don't know about the replay buffer, so just make sure that you have that started. You can also set your replay buffer to a hotkey, so if you wanted, you could have a cheap workaround by having your start streaming and start replay buffer bound to the same hotkey. So now, every time I start streaming by hitting the 1 key, my start replay buffer will also kick in. This is basically just a failsafe to make sure that your replay buffer is also running while you're streaming. Now, wherever your recording output is set to in your output settings, that is where your replay buffer is going to go. So right now it's set to users, my username, and then videos. That's where all of my replay buffers as well as my videos are going to go. So if you have your hotkey enabled when you save your replay buffer, that's where your clip will go. And lastly, the last one that I like to show that actually I take a little pride in because I suggested this in the OBS forums about 4 years ago and it finally got put in after I was told that my project idea had been approved, was a native screenshot of your overlay. So I like to make a lot of my overlays. I made this overlay. It was based off Modern Warfare when it first came out. Now, obviously not without the cropped edges and everything, but the specific edge box when you're first loading in, go ahead and look at that. It's very similar. And I like to make my own overlays. So one of the things I always had to do was take a screenshot of what was happening with the print screen button, put it into a photo editor, and then start editing it that way. Now you can actually get native screenshots. And you do this by going into settings, then going into hotkeys and find your screenshot output. So all you're going to do is bind it to a hotkey. We'll say F1, click apply. And then once you do, anywhere where your output is set to, just like your clips were, that's where your screenshots are also going to go to. So if you want to take a screenshot of your overlays or notifications or something that's happening on screen, you want to make a pose, it'll now have a native screenshot of whatever your canvas is resolution. All right, guys, there you have it. If you haven't, go check out my best encoder settings video or my best microphone sound settings video over here on the side. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below or hop into the Discord. And until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Oh!